Hi and welcome to Boss Design. So today we're here in the factory at Boss Drive in Dudley. This is one of our UK factories where we put a lot of the higher skill, longer labour, often bigger pieces of upholstery through. Today we're going to be looking at upholstery in a bit more detail. A lot of the questions that we're being asked and the kind of insight that people want into the background, the workings of the companies around the subjects of sewing, upholstery and the general principles of patterning and tailoring. So we're going to take a slightly deeper dive into that today. Joining me here is Kev Davis. Kev's been with the business for 30 years and is, in all senses of the word, a master upholsterer. Kev leads the development team here at Boss Design and therefore is used to working an end-to-end process and often taking some really sketchy design work from designers at the front end and turning it into something that's tangible, that's practical and solving all of those myriad problems that you need to do from A to Z. We're going to start by talking a little bit about the structure of products now. Essentially there's two ways of constructing the bones of a product. There is the traditional manner, which still uses a solid timber or plywood internal framework onto which you then sculpt a lot of slab foams. But whilst we still have those positions within the portfolio, in the main, over the course of the last few years, our investment has been more towards moulded foam. Now, a lot of advantages with the moulded foam process. From a designer's perspective, it means that you can create really quite complex organic forms. You don't have to worry anymore about the cost and complexity of creating the internal frameworks from a timber kind of skeleton. It means that the only constraint becomes whether the upholsterers can pull a cover onto it and makes it look good. So the designers love this process, but also from a manufacturing efficiency perspective, it's great. Basically, it takes what used to be, 12 to 20 different components that were required within a single form, and it cuts that right down to often, a single crude steel skeleton shape, and then the moulded foam body and seat. So you're reducing a lot of the componentry. We're moving to a position where the stuff that comes into the factories and goes onto the upholsterers' benches can be relied upon to be the same every time. The tolerances are very tight, and therefore it brings the skill back in-house to what we do best. It's about the cutting, the sewing and the tailoring. We're no longer fighting against the tolerances in plywood and in traditional hardwood frames. So this is a Paloma frame, one of our latest products, and this is quite typical for what we do. So using either rod or solid bar, we create as crude, as lightweight a skeleton as we can. This skeleton then goes into an open and close cavity into which we inject liquid foam. That polyurethane foam then expands to fill the cavity, and this is the kind of thing that you get out at the other end, the kind of thing that then comes into our factory and onto our upholsterers' benches. So as you can see, in terms of creating a smooth organic form and being able to design in all of those subtle blends that we aspire to do, it becomes very easy. It also gives you a beautiful clean shut-off, so a really sharp parting line in the tool that runs around the perimeter of the product, and we love that. We use that to our benefit in a lot of different circumstances, but principally it means that we most usually run our main sewing seam around that perimeter line. It gives you a marker all the way around. It gives you something to fit to in quite simple terms. So we're going to hand over to Kev now, and we're going to start talking in a bit more detail about patterning and tailoring. So I'll just move these off the bench and we'll replace this with a manta frame. Okay, so slightly bigger armchair, lounge chair, this is Manta from our standard portfolio, but exactly the same process, the same principles as we just talked about. So inside here, you've got that steel frame, and of course you've got a really good density of foam, a lot of comfort coming from the shape. So we're proud of our ability here in order to pattern and to tailor. And one of the things that sets us apart from a lot of the rest of the market is how open-minded we are to giving as much control as possible to the specifier and to the end user client. So we're not a company who say, okay, here's our new product and it's available in these 3 fabrics. We are most often a company that says, okay, here's our new product, now what would you like to do with it? And that means that for Kev and the team, you've got a massive headache on your hands, because every day and every week, the same products are going through the factory in a very wide plethora of fabrics. And as you know, every fabric mechanically, technically is slightly different to the next. So in terms of the amount of stretch, the thickness, the body of the fabric, but also the direction of that stretch, what it wants to do from a sewing perspective, and of course then the ongoing durability and tightness of that fabric over time. Everything's very different. So for a body like this, where you've got a sewn bag essentially that pulls down from top to bottom and is tacked off on the base of this unit, whilst a lot of companies will run with a set of patterns for fabric, one for leather and one for vinyls, it's not unusual for Kev to develop 12, even 14 sets of patterns just to cover all of those ranges of fabrics that we expect to be coming through. And still, on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, he's adjusting the patterns to fulfill those requirements that are in between or out width of those original patterns that have been created. So just in simple terms, to demonstrate the importance of patterning and the fine tolerance on those patterns, we're going to start by pulling a cover onto this. We've got a Chimera blazer fabric here, and Kev's going to pull that on and do a loose tack on this body. And it's blazer and it's been cut from a blazer pattern, so the theory is it should fit like a glove. We'll then take the same set of patterns, we'll cut a different couple of fabrics from that, one that's a little looser and one that's a little tighter, and we'll start to see immediately the difficulties that arise from that.
Before we start as well, we spray all our foams with a siliconated spray, just helps the cover ease onto the body a bit more than ripping the foam. Whenever we can as well, we always put indication marks onto our frames so we know, so the guys when they're upholstering can always get the seams where they need to fit, because there is also legs to follow through the sewing seams. And that is basically a loose tack which we do, which makes sure the cover's in place, all the seams in parallel lines, and then basically we just go around now and fill in all the bits we've missed out with the stapling. Okay, so what we've got here is a blazer pattern that fits like a glove in blazer, so job done. We like convex surfaces. There's subtlety in a lot of the time in the design, not just on the insides, but also through outside surfaces like this. Just a very subtle convex surface that runs through from top to bottom can often, of course, aid from a visual fit perspective. Maybe a good time to mention sewing as well. So the two main sewing seams that we use are a top stitch, which is often the stitch that runs around the perimeter edge of a product like this, and then whenever we're joining on an internal or external wrap, we use a twin needle stitch. Now, great visual stitch, but if you pass that remix cover to me, I'll show you part of the reason why we like the twin stitch so much. It's because of the durability of it. So you're not just joining two pieces of fabric together. There's also a tape that runs down the inside of that, which means that you're going through
additional level of security. So, okay, so Blazer works in Blazer, that's good. We've cut a Quadrat Remix cover here from the same pattern. So Kev will now try and get that on. So Quadrat Remix, a great material to work with. It's tighter, there's less stretch, a little bit less body in it than many of the wool-based fabrics that we use. But it's a beautiful tailored finish, and of course has become very popular across a lot of markets over the last couple of years. So, you see we're running into problems straight away here. This is going to be a test of your strength.
Can be a test of the strength, but at the same time it's not going to fit.
Okay, so we'll see how much. He's almost got the top stitch running around that perimeter line around the back. But then you can see when you're looking at the side of the product here, I mean, you need a pattern here which is comfortably 40 mil shorter than the one in which we've just used for Blazer. It's a considerable difference, even though this is still a wool-based fabric. Of course, when you get to a lot of the polyesters that come through the factory, those that are used, you can get to a point where they're even tighter than this. If you really had to, you could probably pull this on, couldn't you?
You could get on in some sort of a workable way, yeah, but
and
again it would have all the leading edges off the edges, which wouldn't look right.
No,
so
absolutely.
An object.
For us, the fit, the quality of the tailoring is the difference between a product that looks simply okay or a product that looks absolutely stunning. So we choose not to compromise on any of these. We'll take the remix off this then now, and we'll move to something with a bit more body and a little more stretch. Okay, so lovely new fabric that's on the market now. This is Camira's Yoredale. Much thicker, lovely amount of texture in this, and really helping to contribute to that softening of workplace finishes.
You can see right away this is going to be quite a bit too big.
So you can see from the Yoredale cover, there's no point in even tacking it off here. Like to get it on so that it fits at the front, immediately there's a real excess of fabric coming round. Now again, given long enough, Kev could get this on, and at least I think could probably make it look presentable on the day that it left the factory. The problem is that all of that excess cover doesn't just disappear, and over the first few hours, days, months that the product is sat on, it's just going to come back to haunt you. It's going to bag. There's going to be an excess, what we call puddling of fabric around the body and through the seat. So yeah, unfortunately, Kev, 14 sets of patterns is where it's at. Here you see the finished article. This time different pattern again. This is a wool polyester blend fabric, but again, as you can see, it's tight as a glove. It looks the finished article, and that's the kind of quality of tailoring, the quality of fit that we aspire to provide on every single piece of furniture that leaves our factories.